So anyway, I want to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy, not about his politics, but like more about how he's going about and like doing things. And caveat, first of all, this is not a political channel. So if you're looking for like a thorough political policy analysis of this dude, this ain't the place, buddy. Here, I like to talk about the creator economy. I want to help people, kids, get jobs into this place faster than I did. I work in political media, news media, whatever you can call it. But this channel is like a safe space if you want to understand about how the creator economy, the podcast world, the internet, media online works. That's what I'm trying to do here. And I think this case study of Vivek and the podcast politicians, trademark, I'm calling it, how podcast politicians are going about doing their thing. I think it's important for us to dissect that because I think we will see a lot more of this. So yeah, let's get into it. Vivek, he seems new, he seems different, but not in a way he would like you to believe. He is beating the drum of, I am an outsider, I am anti-establishment. I don't like that when people do it because at this point it's corny. People know that they get brownie points if they describe themselves as anti-establishment, the guy who is trying to change the system, all that stuff. So he's playing into that, and that's cool, do your thing. But I think there's like a bigger play here, not in a way which is like conniving and evil, but from like a media point of view, we have to look at like how he is going about doing his thing. Yes, like Vivek is not a capital P politician. He's not a career politician. So that's important. So in that case, yeah, he is an outsider. More important than that is the fact that he's calling himself an outsider, even though his beliefs are pretty cookie cutter Republican politics, which is, again, I'm not judging your politics here, but your beliefs, like these beliefs that's here, these you would see on conservative right-wing Twitter at least once a day, twice if it's a slow news day. These are around all the time. We have like, we know all this, like God, two genders, all that, like Jesus, like that's every day in right-wing Twitter. So that's nothing new here. So what exactly makes Vivek an outsider? If it's not his politics, what exactly is it? And I think, in my opinion, this is the first time we're witnessing what it means to be a product of the internet, or even better, do the majority of the heavy lifting of your campaign online. And the funny thing is, he's not the first one to do it. Other people have done it previously, but the establishment, Capitol Hill, other politicians, journalists were kind of able to shrug them off because they were not threatening in a way that Vivek is this time around. And that's really important. You saw like how pissed off Mike Pence got at him, how pissed off Chris Christie was at him, and honestly that kind of makes me happy. That makes me laugh. Anytime boomers are mad, makes me happy. But the important part here is like people are realizing that you can do your campaign like this and not only make the polls but like stand center stage at RNC's debate stage. That's the important part here. All right, I want to come back to Vivek, but before I do that, I want to kind of go down the list and kind of explore other politicians who have done similar stuff. First up, Andrew Yang. Before I get into it, overall, probably the first time I realized that I want to hang out with a politician. I liked that dude. Just an abstract, I like to get a beer with you kind of way. For the longest time, none of the cable news channels would have him on, but I was hearing about him all the time. And that's kind of a funny gauge, especially for me. I work in news, I work in politics. And when you hear about someone online a lot, and then you don't hear about him from your colleagues, my bosses, other people, then I'm like, all right, something is off here. Either my sample size is really skewed, or there's a bigger thing at play. And there was a bigger thing at play in his case. The first time I kind of had to like do a pause was when I saw him on H3H3. Ethan Klein and his wife, Elia Klein, I think. They're kind of like this funny couple-esque thing. I used to see him on my recommendation feed all the time. Back in the day, he used to talk about, I don't know, just like funny California weed stuff. That was his genre. And one day, boom, you see a guy who wants to be the president on that podcast. You kind of have to like stop and like think about something like that. An equivalent would be if Ronald Reagan announced his presidency on Jeopardy with Alex Trebek. And there's nothing both of these two guys have in common, but Ronald Reagan, in this case, would realize that, okay, this guy has audience, this guy has a general interest audience, and I want to leverage that instead of leveraging the 9 p.m. spot on CBS. So that's kind of the analogy. And then he kind of started doing rounds. He was on Z-Way's podcast. She did it really well. She had like Chet Hanks on. Like, see what I'm saying? Chet Hanks and Andrew Yang. Both of these people are your guests. Why? That makes no sense. But it did. Because at the end of the day, it's about the vibe check. It's about the likability clause. If you see a politician on someone's podcast, someone who you are consuming a lot, someone who you have allowed in your life a lot, because that's what podcasts are. You spend like 2 hours, 3 hours with these people across the week. So you are giving them disproportionate time in your life. So you're building this parasocial relationship with these people. And if these people are kind of interviewing politicians, that kind of comes with a weight. The chances of you paying attention to these politicians would be much higher rather than if they would just went on TV, let's say. Andrew Yang realized that, and then he was on Joe Rogan, the 900-pound gorilla, 600-pound gorilla, 900, I don't know, the big gorilla in the podcasting world, and then he just blew the fuck up. And this whole podcasting tour did two things. First, it kind of explained people what UBI was, which is something I think he was genuinely trying to explain people what universal basic income is. And secondly, the more important one is establish this vibe check, like increase his likability. People liked him, at least I did. And long story long, he gained enough traction to make the polls, finally make the debate stage. And even on the stage, he kind of like acted out his true outsider persona when he called out other politicians on the stage for, wearing makeup. Like, it's kind of funny, like all these politicians who are trying to rule America, you're standing on a stage like all dolled up trying to tell them why you're the best. So it's kind of funny. And he called it out, and people like that. But all Andrew Yang wanted, in my opinion, from the get-go was explain people what UBI was, which at that time was really hard to do, because you realize that you are in a race where everyone is trying to make the pitch to Americans why they are the person who hates Trump the most, and on comes you who wants to talk about the future of work and automation and all these complex sociological stuff. Why the fuck should people pay any attention to you? So he wanted long form content podcasts to allow him the bandwidth to explain why that's important. Secondly, I think he just wanted to be taken seriously, and cable news channels did not take him seriously, and that matters. In the end, he was taken seriously, and the internet was the first place to do it. All right, next up is Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson, mouthful. Marianne, just call her Mary. Anywho, what's her deal? She's kind of a combination of your cool/crazy aunt who would show up on Thanksgiving after being in France year long, and she has no intention of having kids, and a tinge of the crazy fortune teller. And what's her politics? I don't know. It's like break up monopolies, break up big banks, break up American corporation, the Bernie genre of politics, mixed with, and this is what makes her different, is be nice to each other, spirituality, get back to your roots. I don't know, like walk bare feet on outside in California. She didn't say that. I'm just making shit up. And also like don't eat seed oil food and stuff like that. That's her. It's a hodgepodge of opinions, but that's who she is. So what did she do? She's running the same play as Andrew Yang by going on podcast after podcast after podcast. She was on the stage the last time around. She's trying to get on the stage once again. Will it work? I do not know. Look at her right here. She's on the couch with a comedian talking about, I don't know what. Does that make me want to vote for her? Not really. I just in general, no. But at the same time, does that make me like her a little bit and also want to pay attention to what she's saying? Yes. And honestly, that's what matters in the attention economy. And whether you like it or not, you are in the race of attention economy, because if you want to win, first of all, you have to win attention. Trump had the huge advantage of having garnered disproportionate amount of attention from his TV days, and also all the channels, all the cable news channels, just insane amount of access to the American public by just covering him over and over and over again. Again, not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that's how he won the attention economy. He didn't have to go out of his way to go on podcasts, to go on Joe Rogan, even though he wants to get the attention of the American public. The cable news channels did it for him, even though his views were fringe for them, even though he was an outsider for them. He was just crazy enough for the news to cover him over and over and over again. According to mainstream media, he presented enough of a threat to the American democracy that they had to show the public what he's about. That's how he won the attention economy. For candidates like Yang and Marianne Williamson, they're not exactly like trying to do enough damage here, so the cable news channels are not forced to cover them, and at the same time they don't take them seriously because they have these, I don't know, cuckoo socialists, they have these like beliefs which they consider fringe. So that's how they justify not covering them. All right, next up is RFK Jr., and this is where it gets tricky. Why? Because unlike Marianne Williamson or Andrew Yang, this dude has the last name of Kennedy. That has some weight to it, doesn't it? You see, like, Yang had this pie in the sky thing about UBI. Like, at some point in the future, people will earn money from government just by existing, right? That's too abstract. That's too nebulous. And Marianne had the vibe of a sociology TA in a liberal arts school. So both of them were easy for the media to kind of shun, like, I don't know who these people are, fringe people. But at the same time, on comes RFK, guns blazing, with his last name, and the media kind of have to like pause and take account to what's going on. And they did have to take a lot of account because RFK wanted to talk about stuff. He wanted to talk about the vaccine. He wanted to talk about CIA. He wants to talk about whether or not the government did something to the other Kennedy and all this stuff. And the media was like, who is this guy? And they gave him the fucking Scholar A, the fringe label, whatever. And then he realized that, all right, cool, I gotta play into this persona of the, I'm being censored, I'm the conspiracy guy and all that stuff. I'm not saying he was a conspiracy guy, I'm not saying he was censored, but that's the archetype he ended up in. Like, there were podcast after podcast after podcast where he went and talked about, like, he looked like a normal working class guy. Even though he has a last name Kennedy, he didn't wear a suit, he just had his shirt with his sleeves rolled up. That matters. That's intentional. And he was being that guy. He was shirtless, benching with other dudes. It looked cool. I'll be honest. I work out. I like those kind of stuff. And I thought, damn, this looks cool. Like, see what happened there? Like, even though I'm kind of doing a pause on his politics, the fact that how he's presenting himself vis-a-vis the podcast wall, that kind of subconsciously did something in my brain. Right? Even for a second. And that's what I'm talking about here. Anywho, so the TLDR on RFK right now is, this guy is the Republicans' favorite Democrat. And whatever you think about that, whether or not you like him or do not like him, if you want to step on the DNC stage, that's a no bueno. But here's the thing. RFK, Marianne, Yang, I think they are not that bothered with the fact that they aren't going to win this thing, even their own party's nomination. The charitable way to look at this is that they had a genuine interest of spreading the word for their respective causes. And the skeptic way of looking at it would be all they wanted to do was get some name recognition enough that they can leverage into book sales, podcast downloads, what have you. They just want to be famous. And here's where Vivek comes into play. Like them, he too is doing the podcast rounds. Like RFK, he too is shirtless, playing tennis this time. He is rapping in Iowa State Fair, where most people would mispronounce his last name. He's rapping there. Why? Like, how weird is that? You know why? Because he wants to win this thing. And that's what makes him different. That's what makes him threatening. All of these people who I named before, RFK, Yang, Marianne, they were not threatening enough. Like, Bernie was threatening, so they had to do something about him. This time, Vivek has that same amount of threat. When he got on the stage, how pissed off was Chris Christie? How pissed off was Nikki Haley? How pissed off was Mike Pence? These people embody the establishment, for good or for bad. These people are the people when you call, like, oh, nothing gets done in DC. These are the people you're talking about. He is here to ruin the cookie cutter Republican Party despite being a cookie cutter Republican himself. That's the key here. His beliefs are not novel. at all. He has the shine and the exoticness of being a podcast candidate while having the exact same talking points of a Republican consultant in DC. Again, mixed with some nationalism, mixed with some populism, mixed with some Trump talking points here and there. And he is sharp. That dude is really smart. He is smart enough that he hasn't gone directly against Trump because he knows in the Republican base, if you want to go against Donnie, that's basically it. Like that's your candidacy right there. Nothing's gonna happen to you. Like Chris Christie, good debater, did some good stuff in Jersey, but the fact that he is like a staunch, Romney-esque guy who hates Trump, you're not gonna go anywhere. Vivek knows that, so he has not once gone directly against Trump. And Trump, being the, ego-driven guy he is, since Vivek hasn't gone against him, he hasn't said a single word about him. Unlike DeSantis, unlike Haley, unlike Pence, he has gone against all these people because he holds vendetta. They said something bad about him, so he has to say bad stuff about him. Not Vivek, because he hasn't said a single thing about Trump. He has said stuff here and there, like he could have governed better. He could have been like a better president because he couldn't. He was so passive because he always flips the conversation about, oh, this is about a national conversation. This is about redefining what it means to be in America. Like he just zooms out instantly, makes it a meta conversation. He's smart about it. All right, so the TLDR on Vivek and how he's going about Trump is he is supporting him while stealing his supporters. Something similar would be, okay, let's imagine you're a dude and you're on a dinner table with your best friend, who's a dude, and his girlfriend. And for the longest time, you had this belief that you were the better guy. You still are the better guy. She should be with you. All right, so what should you do here? Should you, at the table, shit talk your friend in front of his girlfriend? No, you should not. Because she would think that A, you're a jerk, B, you're not a good friend, C, even though I'm not exactly happy in this relationship, I'm not gonna go with this guy who shit talks his own friend on her dinner table. So what should you do? First of all, you should flood him with praises. Vivek floods Trump with praises. He thinks he's the best president ever. You would tell the girl that, oh, you're in such a good relationship, he's such a good boyfriend, and all that stuff. Vivek tells Trump supporters that, yeah, you guys are the best. You guys are right to support Trump because he's the best president ever. And now that the girl's defense is down, her guard is down a little bit, you would slowly and really consciously let her know that you are the better guy. So what would you do once her guard is down and she thinks that you're a good guy, which I don't know, you probably are. What would you do? You would let her know that A, you have the better job, or B, I don't know, you go to the gym every day. And one day when she's kind of mulling over the fact that, is my boyfriend the right guy, which the American public can do in future, which the Republicans can do in future, because Trump has all these gajillion indictments and he's probably, I don't know, like go to jail, not go to jail, but whatever, that's doubt right there. Once she starts having those doubts, you are the first guy she calls. And that's the play here. I think Vivek wants to be the backup boyfriend, and one day when you want to break up with Trump, you are the guy she calls. All right, to wrap this up, I want to quote one of my favorite philosophers from fucking grad school, Marshall McLuhan. I think he's Canadian. That's ironic that I'm quoting him for American politics. He said, the medium is the message, right? It sounds super highbrow, but stay with me. It basically means the medium that you're using has a conscious effect on the content that you're talking about or writing about. Like the medium matters arguably more than the content itself. The medium in Vivek's case is the long form podcast, right? And that is subconsciously defining his image as this cool, exotic outsider. It helps that he's also Indian and has a funny last name. The medium in Vivek's case are the long form podcast, the unfiltered, uncensored conversations. And that has a symbolic relationship with the audience. And that relationship kind of is the lens through which you are observing the content, the messaging that he's producing, which is just garden variety Republican politics.